to the next speaker just because we don't want to run out of time. We did make today's event does go to 3:30. I assume everyone noticed that when they signed up, but we're going to switch now to Terri Szymanski from OPSEU, who's a major partner with OCAO and others in the mental injury tool development, the toolkit, and also in stress assess. So she and Patricia Zonta, who have worked with her on a survey, who's a registered social worker from a community service agency in Southwestern Ontario, are going to talk about some templates, tales, and tricks about survey administration and the successful implementation in workplaces. So Terri and Patricia, go ahead. And I am going to put a link in to Stress Assess itself, assuming that you'll be talking about it, and also to the document that you're going to refer to later. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, great. So thanks for welcoming Patricia and I. We've been talking about surveys. I know that on May 8th there was the presentations about Stress Assess. We got today the presentation on the pandemic survey. I'm going to talk a little bit about with Patricia what happens after the survey. Because the survey process takes a lot of time and energy, and people spend time and focus and concentration doing it. And so then what do we do after the survey to make sure that everyone feels like it was a valuable thing to do, and that whatever issues we're trying to, uncover and address, that action takes place. I just wanted to say also that Patricia's employer was going to join us today, but she had another commitment. So Patricia and I will take it in her stead, but we did consult with Patricia's employer on the slide deck, and because we've been working together on the outcome of the survey in this workplace. So with that, just going to do something very quickly in about 20 minutes, talk about the process. I should also mention that on the call, there's lots of other people that were involved in the processes that we use now after Stress Assess. People from the Mental Injury Tool Group. I saw Ted Haynes was on, Val's our host, Michael Roche from OCAO's on, John Odike, of course, Laura Lazansky. There might be other people that I didn't see on there, but what I'm going to talk about is kind of like something that the group of us have discovered as we have moved forward using this survey in workplaces. And so I thought to myself, well, I need to, bring someone on from a workplace who can talk about the practical application through these steps and templates. So templates, some tales, and some tricks that I'm going to talk about. So there you go, Val. There's the link to Stress Assess there, but I figured, it's good if you put it in the box. So it was this Stress Assess survey that the workplace did. And what we do is we're kind of inspired by, if you look at what kind of a framework, a theoretical framework, if you say, that we would be kind of using and that we're going to talk about, and we were inspired by the Sobane tools. That came, I think, out of France as like a framework based on the word, they use the word DEPARI. I'm probably butchering that word in French, but it's a French acronym for the participatory screening of workplace risks, where worker perceptions are seen as kind of the gold standard of determining whether a particular risk factor is present in a workplace. There's a bunch of tools that the Sobane has developed, and it's based on the idea that a lot of action can happen at the workplace level where at all possible. And so to break it down, they have, and I've got the red box around, the screening, observation, and analysis stages where you go up to the expert. You don't start with the expert. You might not even need the expert. Workers are experts in the work that they do, and people in workplaces are experts in the workplace that they're in. So they're in the best frame of mind and with knowledge and expertise to address issues that come up in that workplace. So you can see that in screening, workers can identify hazards based on firsthand experience. Observation, you start to get into some tools and checklists, and I know the SOBANE tools have checklists for joint health and safety committees to sit and move through the psychosocial aspects in case the workplace doesn't want to do an individual survey. And then you can get even further up the chain to quantitative evaluation, hygienists, experts, such as what OPSEU has, and actually the experts behind Stress Assess, and because Stress Assess comes from the Copenhagen Psychosocial Questionnaire, which was also developed. And these tools are developed to be used at the workplace by the workplace participants. And the idea is to avoid expert syndrome, to try to practically resolve issues that arise at the workplace, and to mutually decide which aspects need attention. And caution, this process is free. So the other thing we saw along the way is, because the Mental Injury Tool Group has been active since, I think, around 2010. We're at like 10 years now. But we watched a workplace hit the news in 2012 when a scandal broke out at a workplace. And the process that those workers used is kind of a natural process to bring issues up and try to get issues addressed at the workplace. So the workers had been meeting off-site to decide what their issues were, such as not having their expertise recognized, not being listened to, they felt bullied. They felt favoritism. Eventually, they wrote down what they called a red sky document, where they wrote down neutrally worded list of what the issues are at work and their 4 or 5 suggestions on how to improve them. Now, later on, I think a year or two later, when the investigator report came out, said that the employer hadn't attended adequately to the issues that had been raised. But just the idea of workers meeting, talking, and creating suggestions to recommend improvement is kind of an iterative process that falls kind of under the SOBANE way of doing things. And so we saw that along the way. Now, in the earlier OPSEU sessions, there was some really great sessions talking about, the standard and the ISO standard for psychological health and safety. And so is this a management system? Well, kind of. If you accept that legitimate action can come from the bottom up, or the middle up, or the middle down, or the top down, or across. But management systems often assume too readily that action will always rightfully come from the top and naturally. And they rely on the people with the power often to believe in and to practice the consultation, which this exists in many forms. So if we get to the tricks and the templates in the workplace example, creating a timeline obviously is a must, especially, to do a survey. So we've kind of created this just blank page that we use. But my tip for you is to start at the end first, because near the end of the timeline is brainstorming sessions and a time when you want the results. And so if you say to yourself, what is the natural flow of my organization, and when do I get people all together that I could brainstorm, or when do I need my results by? Say you have an event coming where everyone's going to be together, then we can plug that date right in there, and then you basically figure out the rest of your timeline based on what you're already doing in your organization. So the timetable is key. And the wizard, where did we get, those ideas for the timetable? Well, right in the Stress Assess wizard that, the OPSEU and the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety put online. There's lots of, the steps are there based on the Dillman book of how to do a survey properly, which John read, but we didn't, but we take his word for it that these are the steps. And within those steps in the tool, there's template materials also. So in there, you'll find the template for writing a letter to explain what you're doing. You'll find templates for the reminders, first, second, and third reminder that you can copy and paste to your own email and tailor as you like. I think there might be a launch memo in there. So there's some templates in there. The ones I'm showing you aren't in there yet. I'm lobbying to have them in there, and we'll see how that goes, but they are available, and I'm sure OCAL could put, I mean, we use the same timeline and we tailor it to our needs, and I'm going to talk about another one coming up soon. So yeah, if you start and follow the steps and then use the tools, it's pretty well not a difficult process. And so for the workplace that Patricia works at, how it began is I got a call from, I don't think it was Patricia, but it was someone from the local that wanted to run the project. Patricia, maybe you can take over and tell us a bit about what got your project started there.
Sure. Can everyone hear me? Everything's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it began by a coworker and a colleague attending an OPSEU conference. She came back with the idea and said, hey, we could address our mental health by doing this survey and getting an outcome, and we can maybe try to change some things in our workplace. So it was a worker-led project. I'm in a small community agency, so very like 25 staff, not that large, and we felt that the workplace at that time was toxic. So as you can see with the survey results, 95.5 came back in. The survey took place from July the 9th to August the 3rd, 2018. So our employer at this point didn't really have a role at this stage, but she was receptive when it was brought forward. So what we really wanted to do was we wanted to break the chain of, it's always been done this way. And staff felt that they weren't being validated. So we wanted to create a new pattern within our workplace.
Val?
Okay.
Did you put me back, Val? Hello?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to kind of poke back and forth a bit, Patricia and I. Anyway, so one of the steps that we discovered as a mental injury tool group, I don't remember how long ago, but we toyed with many different ways of reporting results after the survey. So, OCAL at the time, even before the stress assess existed, there was a 27-page, what we called the long report. So there was the long report with all the graphs, the kind of thing that John and Peter Smith really like looking at, and a lot of employers like looking at, and some workers like looking at, but not everyone likes looking at the same type of info. So we created what we called the short report, which was a one-pager, and it's a one-pager that we use for general distribution so that all the people that did the survey can say, oh, okay, I did that and here's how it turned out. And we use this one pager to prepare for various things, the brainstorming meeting that could be coming up. We could use it to prepare to table the results to the Joint Health and Safety Committee or the employer. And we just develop the format here, and then we just retype in the proper information for the workplace we're working with. So the introduction, we tailor the content as we need for the results of the workplace we are in. So it just basically gives you just the snapshot of information. And I remember in the beginning when we created this, we made John put all this technical information on the back, the bottom, because we wanted what were the results to be what people saw. And so that's how we created the one-pager. So we used the one-pager, and I remember helping the rep from this workplace, I think it was Patricia's predecessor, on the phone, flipping through the 27-page report. And, over about the course of an hour, we had written, this isn't their report, by the way. This is the sample that's just based with the random suggestions that we use for the template. But I remember sitting with her on the phone for about an hour and coming up with, and she drafted it herself, just based on, looking through the report. And with a steering committee, lots of surveys go with the steering committee. So we recommend that. I don't know if she had one. She probably did have one. What do you think, Patricia? Did she have a steering committee? And do you remember this one-pager back then?
Yes, I do remember the one-pager. And yes, we did have a steering committee at the time. So we, you need that to spearhead everything to keep it going, right? So yes, we did have it.
Yeah. And so I remember that what we do is just take, and we always oftentimes will send the one-pagers and just double check them and make sure we have the data right, and sometimes we'll get John to look at it before just to make sure that we've interpreted some of the statistics correctly. And then we're planning towards a brainstorming meeting. So, and you know, the brainstorming meeting, in this local, was the workers, but different workplaces have employers being involved at different stages. Some are involved at the beginning to do the survey, some not. So there's been, the brainstorming meetings can be joint, and the idea here is to collect ideas from the people, to use the one-pager and the longer report, to go over the results of the survey and to collect people's ideas about how to move forward and what recommendations they have to deal with the issues raised. For instance, I remember one of the results for this workplace was that 100% of the respondents had witnessed bullying, and 80% had said they experienced it. So there was some Joint Health and Safety Committee recommendations that came up after this. As in most workplaces, there's always usually some Joint Health and Safety Committee recommendations. So this brainstorming meeting, you know, a lot of people will share ideas. The objective is to write them down, and then open up a 2-week period, because not everyone feels comfortable to share their ideas in a big group. And so for that, we usually find out who is going to collect the confidential suggestions, because then all the names are kept confidential and the recommendation is kept confidential, and then it becomes part of the tabling document that we'll get into soon. And one of the things we do at the brainstorming meetings to generate the discussion is sometimes we'll refer to some of the resources like the International Labor Organization Stress Prevention Checkpoints to open up the conversation on some of the topics that came up in that survey to start the discussion about, because that resource outlines a lot of different ideas for each of the checkpoints. And so then we take the suggestions that came from the room and also the suggestions that come in privately and confidentially. And here's where I could use Daryl's Navivo software, because basically what we do is we sort them into categories of topics and themes. And so there might be themes like justice and respect, communication, you know, worker support, health and safety, all these kinds of things, different themes for different groups of people. And then we number the recommendations and divide them up by themes. And then that tabling document becomes the roadmap for moving forward. And usually then there's some kind of presentation, you know, at the Joint Health and Safety Committee or to, you know, the Joint Committee plus the Labor Management Committee and with the employer, where we take from the tabling document into the work plan the ones, you know, and then move forward with a tracking document. So sometimes it's just changing the format of the document, or sometimes they might decide, well, we're not going to move forward with that one now, but, you know, we make ourselves a work plan. Ideally, we would keep all of the recommendations in the tabling document into this, because they came up as ideas, and so the parties can discuss them and they can operationalize them any which way that works in that workplace, and it can be over a period of discussion. So Patricia, over to you to talk about how that document and how that step in the process happened at your place.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through each one, but they're self-explanatory. The justice and respect, leadership, staff support and training, combating bullying and harassment, improve job security, address quantitative demands, and fast-paced work. So what happened out of this, we spoke to our employer and we presented it to her in order to make changes to our recommendations. And I can speak to specifically the staff support training, which was recommendation number 17, which was what came out of that was our wellness committee. So that wellness committee was something that was implemented under that category, staff support and training. And what we did was we created this wellness committee. So it involves workers as co-workers, as well as management and the executive director. And so we came up with a committee. So they do interesting things throughout the year to try to lighten up our day-to-day monotony, and to help us with our stress and our well-being. And this was done to kind of improve our culture, to validate our stress, and to work with our day-to-day stress so that it doesn't become a bigger issue. Also to manage our emotions for our mental health. So one of the things that our employer did was she was able to redecorate our lunchroom and our staff room where we spend, some time when we're on our breaks, just to make it a more comfortable surrounding during our work day, so that we have somewhere we can go to. And yeah, so that's pretty much what we did, and that's still continuing, and it's still going well. So if I can leave you with a final remark stating, we continue to move forward with this document. It's a living document, and we're like any other workplace. It's always a work in progress. The main thing is you just have to do something to create change, because you can't keep doing the same things and expect change to happen. So that's what we did in our workplace.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you, Patricia, for stepping up, because the project, it went through different, we have committee changes, we have people changing, taking over the projects, and this is often one of the challenges in the projects. But, you took it over, you caught yourself up, and you carried it on, and now your employer is actively engaged. We've met a couple of times now, and you're still, I know that from your list of recommendations, some went to the Labor Management Committee and some went to the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and that you continue to work. I mean, that's really, it's a journey, and there is no recipe. It's not complicated. It's about identifying the issues and addressing them. It's about involving everyone. Mm-hmm. It's about solving, issues that arise and improving the workplace environment in ways that everybody can accept, not just ways that some people think. I mean, everyone has probably heard the stories of employers canceling, say, Christmas bonuses and inviting you to a December 20 to 23rd getaway to build leadership training, which isn't what people want around Christmas time. So sometimes the interventions are meant to be in good stead, but they're actually not the right ones, or employers are spending money on initiatives that aren't really hitting the mark. And so this is, doing and listening to everyone about what would work, and then, improving the workplace for its own sake, because not for, ticking off that box, or, saying that we did that, or being able to put in our flyer that we did that. This project in this workplace, like the many others that occur with Stress Assess, are about improving the workplace for its own sake. And there are tools available to help. We reach for the ILO document a lot that I mentioned. We were inspired by the SOBANE tools, and I really like their psychosocial aspects tool. It even tells you how to even do it in a group. Obviously, I consider this work, and workplaces that do this, that they're actually implementing the standard without even knowing it. And you don't even have to actually, you can go to the standard and find out how to do this through a management system, but I would say it's not necessary. It's one way in, but the more ways in to making psychologically safe and healthy workplaces, the better it is. There's not just one way in, there's not just one door, there's not just one way. This is how it's been working in a lot of workplaces, and in a lot of workplaces who've never even seen the standard. So that's all for me. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. I really appreciate you sharing real life experience. And I did, your one document is linked, and I did put it in the chat as well. There are also some clarifications by John that the Sylvain comes from Belgium, and Dorothy put in some links to work that she's done using the Sylvain. But